All right, so welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're going to be exploring something I find personally super fascinating.
Yeah.
And that is the importance of Friday prayer in Islam.
Yeah.
Not just like the how-tos,
Right.
but like the why behind it.
Yeah.
We've got a really interesting mix of perspectives to kind of unpack.
Yeah.
We've got a fatwa, which is like an official Islamic legal ruling.
Mm-hmm.
And this one's issued by Dar al-Ifta al-Misriya, the Egyptian Islamic fatwa house.
Okay.
We've got a Q&A
Yeah.
from islamqa.info, a pretty popular website if you're looking for Islamic guidance.
Right. Right.
And
Sure.
adding some serious scholarly weight to all of this, we got a lecture by Sheikh Ibn Baz.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he's a prominent Saudi scholar.
Right.
And this was published on his website.
Okay.
Now, you might be wondering, like, why is this relevant to me? If I'm not Muslim,
Right.
stick with us.
Yeah.
Because understanding Friday prayer, it kind of opens this window into Islamic culture and history, social dynamics. And it may even get you thinking about some of the rituals and routines in your own life.
Yeah. I mean, what's fascinating to me is oftentimes,
Yeah.
Friday prayer is discussed purely in like religious terms.
Right.
But what's interesting about all these sources is they highlight
Yeah.
the broader social
Yeah.
and cultural implications.
Yeah.
Even economic ones, which I think everyone can relate to in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, and right off the bat, like all three of these sources emphasize that this isn't just
Yeah.
like another prayer on the Islamic calendar.
It's not just checking a box.
Yeah, Sheikh Ibn Baz actually calls it a pillar of Islam,
Wow.
which really struck me.
Yeah.
It's not just like a routine, it's foundational. It's like
Yeah.
the declaration of faith,
Yeah.
and it kind of makes you think like,
Yeah.
what are the pillars in your life?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, what are those things that
Mhm.
if you took them away, everything would just crumble?
Right.
So it really makes you think about the weight
Yeah.
of these traditions.
And it's a powerful statement, too, to put it on par with, like,
yeah.
the very core of the faith.
Yeah.
And that makes the Egyptian Fatwa House's perspective even more interesting
Mm-hmm.
because they really focus on the social aspect of it,
Yeah.
saying that it's really all about creating bonds and
Yeah.
unity.
Yeah.
Like they even say, and I love this phrasing,
Mm-hmm.
the intended purpose of Friday is the gathering of all believers.
Wow.
It's almost poetic,
Yeah. Okay, so it's a pillar.
Yeah.
It's about community.
right?
But let's get specific here.
Yeah.
Why Friday? Why this gathering? Well, the Quran itself, specifically Surah al-Jumu'ah, verses 9 and 10,
Okay.
explicitly command Muslims to attend Friday prayer.
Got it.
And the Fatwa House really points out that the language in these verses
Right.
is deliberate.
Okay.
They use plural nouns to emphasize seeking God's remembrance, which
Mm-hmm.
they interpret as the prayer and the sermon.
Yeah.
And then there's this fascinating instruction to disperse afterwards to seek sustenance.
Interesting.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
yeah.
that brings up a really...
Yeah, it raises a crucial point, I think, about how intertwined
Yes.
the spiritual and economic aspects are
Yeah.
in Islam.
Yeah.
Like, you gather for prayer. You
Mhm.
gather for community.
Right.
You gather for that reminder of something bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
And then you go back out into the world
Yeah.
to work, to provide,
Right.
to
Yeah.
contribute to society.
It's like this beautiful cycle,
Yeah.
Now, on the topic of Friday, Islam QA Info adds like another layer to all of this,
Yep.
saying Friday itself isn't just some random day of the week.
Right.
It's a day God chose to imbue
Mm-hmm.
with special blessings. They even mention that momentous events, and they don't really specify what these are,
Okay.
but they happened on Fridays in Islamic history.
Yeah.
So it's almost like the day itself
Right.
is charged with this significance,
Yeah.
which then elevates
Right.
the prayer held on that day
Oh, wow.
even further.
Yeah, it's like this layering of meaning
Yeah.
upon meaning. You've got the Quranic command,
Mhm.
you've got the social aspect of it,
Yeah.
and then this inherent specialness of Friday.
Yeah, and this kind of brings us to the question of,
Right.
what are Muslims supposed to do during this prayer?
Yeah.
Both Sheikh Ibn Baz and the Fatwa House talk about the mindset. You
Mhm.
should have, Ibn Baz uses words like
Right.
humility, calmness and dignity when he's describing how to approach
Yeah.
the mosque and the prayer itself.
Interesting.
It's not about like rushing in,
Right.
checking a box and rushing out.
No, it's not transactional at
There's
all.
a real intentionality behind it.
Yeah, it's really about being present,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
both physically and mentally.
Mhm.
To truly benefit from the experience, you have to approach it with purpose,
Yeah.
with intention.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you know, that made me reflect on how often we rush through things
Right.
without truly being present.
Yeah.
Whether it's a religious practice
Right.
or even just like spending time with loved ones.
Absolutely.
Are we really there,
Yeah.
or are we just going through the motions?
That's 100%. Yeah.
And Ibn Baz takes it a step further.
Okay.
He advises people to take care of their worldly duties
Mm-hmm.
beforehand
Okay.
so they can be fully present during prayer.
Interesting.
He even mentions a hadith,
Okay.
which is a saying of the Prophet Muhammad,
Right?
warning that consistently missing Friday prayers
Yeah.
can lead to a hardened heart.
Wow. So that's a powerful image.
Yeah,
I mean, in Islamic thought, a sealed heart
right,
is a heart that's become unable to receive guidance,
right.
to connect with something greater than itself.
Mm-hmm.
It really raises questions about
Yeah,
the consequences, not just religiously,
yeah,
but even in our secular lives,
right,
of neglecting practices
Yeah.
that are meant to center us,
right.
to connect us.
So it's not just about showing up, it's
Right.
about showing up with the right mindset
Mhm.
and understanding
Yeah.
there are consequences
Right.
for consistently neglecting this communal obligation.
Yeah.
And this leads us to another fascinating point that Ibn Baz makes
Okay.
about the Friday sermon itself. He
Yeah.
says it shouldn't just be
Right.
like some abstract religious lecture.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, he really emphasizes the social and
Yes.
educational roles of the sermon.
Mhm.
He urges preachers to address real-world issues,
Yeah.
issues that are relevant to the community,
Yeah.
to provide like practical guidance.
Mm-hmm.
And he seems very aware of the fact that people come to the sermon
Right.
with different levels of
Yeah.
knowledge and
Right.
understanding.
Right.
Some are seeking deeper knowledge.
Yeah.
Some just need like a refresher on the basics.
Right.
Others might be brand new to Islam.
Yeah.
So the preacher has this
Yeah.
huge responsibility to
Yeah.
cater
Right.
to this diverse audience.
That's a challenge for anyone in a teaching position.
Absolutely.
You know, religious or not.
Right.
How do you make your message
Mhm.
relevant and accessible to such a wide range of people?
It's a balancing act for sure,
Yeah.
but it's also a huge opportunity, you know?
Yeah.
And this is where Ibn Baz's critique of leisure comes in.
Okay.
He observes that many Muslims, and let's be honest,
Mhm.
many people in general,
Yeah.
often prioritize
Mm.
leisure activities
Mm-hmm.
over attending prayer
Right.
or engaging in communal practices.
Right.
And it's not a judgment, it's an observation.
Yeah.
A subtle critique,
Right.
but it's there.
Yeah. It's like he's saying, hey, I get it.
Yeah.
Leisure's important.
Right.
But are we losing something
Right.
by consistently choosing it
Yeah.
over these communal experiences?
Yes. And this is where he gets really practical.
Yeah.
It suggests that, you know, if leisure is a must,
Yeah.
try to choose locations
Yeah.
near a mosque.
Right.
So attending prayer
Right.
is still feasible.
It's that balance again.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Mhm.
He's not saying give up one for the other,
Right.
but be mindful
Yeah.
of your choices
Mhm.
and how those choices impact
Yeah.
not just yourself, but
Right.
your connection to something larger.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like he's acknowledging the reality of our busy lives, you know,
Yeah.
and trying to find that middle ground.
Yeah, that's such a great point.
Yeah.
Ibn Baz is prompting us to think about
Mhm.
how we prioritize and structure
Yeah,
our lives, you know.
right.
And this brings us back to the Fatwa House
Yeah.
and their emphasis on
Mhm.
Friday prayer as like a driver
Mm-hmm.
of social and economic activity.
Right.
Remember how they pointed out that the Quran commands Muslims
Yeah.
to attend prayer and then go out and seek sustenance.
Yes, yes, it's explicitly stated right there
Yeah.
in the verses we discussed earlier.
Yeah, and the Fatwa House reminds us that
Mhm.
sustenance doesn't just mean food,
Right.
but it also means like all the things we need to thrive in this world.
Right.
Our livelihoods, our work,
Yeah.
our contributions to society.
It speaks to this beautiful balance
Yeah.
that Islam strives for,
Yeah.
this balance between the spiritual and the material,
Mhm.
the communal and the individual.
Yeah.
It's not about neglecting one for the other,
Right.
but finding a way to integrate them harmoniously. Yeah, that's really profound when you think about it. Like
Yeah.
we all have
Right.
those different dimensions in our lives.
Yeah.
And finding that equilibrium can be such a challenge.
Yeah.
But what I find so fascinating is that the Fatwa House is saying this isn't just like
Right.
some philosophical concept.
Right.
It's actually woven into the fabric of Friday prayer.
Yeah.
You gather for spiritual reflection, connection, and then you go out and engage with the world. Use your talents and resources to contribute to the greater good.
Yeah, it's like Friday prayer becomes a catalyst for personal and societal growth.
I like that.
Right.
And this brings us to another aspect of the sermon that Ibn Baz emphasizes, and that's its educational role. He's urging preachers to move beyond, abstract theological discussions and to address real-world issues, issues that are relevant to the community. He even highlights the fact that sermons need to cater to diverse audiences, people seeking deep theological knowledge, those needing a reminder of basic principles, and even those who are new to Islam.
It's a huge task.
Yeah.
I mean, this requires preachers to be incredibly skilled communicators, able to convey complex ideas in a way that's engaging and accessible to everyone.
That's a tall order.
Oh, yeah.
Huge. But think about how this applies to any form of teaching or leadership.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do we tailor our messages to reach different audiences effectively?
It's something we all grapple with, whether we're leading a team at work, teaching a class, or even just having a conversation with someone who has a different perspective.
And speaking of different perspectives, I think it's important to acknowledge that while our sources offer valuable insights into the importance of Friday prayer, they don't represent the entirety of Muslim thought on the subject.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a wide spectrum of interpretations and practices within Islam.
Right.
And even within these sources, we see subtle differences in emphasis. Like Ibn Baz focuses more on the individual spiritual aspect, while the Fatwa House highlights the communal and societal implications.
And Islam QR Info adds another layer by emphasizing the unique spiritual significance of Friday itself.
Yeah, it's a reminder that even within a shared tradition, there's room for nuance and diversity of thought.
And that's what makes exploring these topics so enriching.
Totally.
We get to see the common threads that unite us, as well as the unique perspectives that make each individual and each community so special.
Absolutely.
This has been such a thought-provoking conversation.
It has.
It's amazing how something like Friday prayer, which, might seem like a purely religious practice, but can spark discussions about community, purpose, balance,
absolutely,
old leadership.
It really speaks to the power of rituals and traditions to transcend their specific contexts and offer insights that resonate with all of us, regardless of our backgrounds or beliefs.
And as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I'm left pondering a question that just keeps coming up. How do we find that sweet spot between our individual needs and our responsibilities to something larger than ourselves?
It's a question worth contemplating. And maybe, just maybe, by reflecting on practices like Friday prayer, we can glean some wisdom and inspiration to help us navigate that delicate balance in our own lives.
It feels like this whole deep dive has been about balance. This balance between the spiritual and the material, the individual and the communal, our obligations and our desires.
It's a universal struggle, isn't it?
Yeah.
And what I find so fascinating is that a practice like Friday prayer, which might seem very specific to Islam, offers this framework for thinking about these broader human challenges.
It's almost like a microcosm of that larger search for balance we all experience. We've explored the Quranic command, the social dimension, the historical significance of Friday. Even the mindset, you're supposed to bring to the prayer itself.
Yeah, we've seen how Ibn Baz emphasizes the potential consequences of neglecting these practices. The hardening of the heart. The disconnect from something greater than ourselves. But he also offers practical advice too. Encouraging Muslims to find creative ways to integrate prayer into their busy lives, even suggesting, choosing leisure activities near mosques to make attendance more feasible.
It's that pragmatism. That I find so refreshing. He's not just preaching from a pulpit. He's offering real-world solutions.
Yeah, he's meeting people where they are.
Yeah, and acknowledging the complexities of, modern life.
Absolutely.
It's a reminder that even ancient traditions can adapt and evolve to meet the needs of contemporary society.
Yeah.
And it makes me think about how we can apply this kind of flexible thinking to our own lives.
Exactly.
How can we find creative ways to honor our commitments and values, even when life gets hectic?
Yeah, it's a good question.
When we started this deep dive, I thought we were going to be talking mostly about, Islamic theology.
Right.
But it's become so much more than that.
Absolutely.
It's a reflection on community, purpose, balance, even leadership.
It's amazing how exploring a seemingly specific ritual can open up these broader conversations.
And I think that's the beauty of the deep dive. We take these deep dives into these specific topics, but we always emerge with insights that resonate far beyond that initial subject matter.
100%.
And for me, one of the biggest takeaways from, this exploration of Friday prayer is the importance of intentionality.
Right.
It's not enough to just go through the motions.
Yeah.
Whether it's in our religious practices, our relationships, or even our daily routines, we need to be present, engaged, mindful of the choices we're making.
And that mindfulness, that intentionality can help us create a life that is more balanced, more fulfilling, more connected to something larger than ourselves.
So to wrap up this deep dive, I want to thank you for joining us on this journey.
Of course.
We've covered a lot of ground today, and I hope you found it as insightful and thought-provoking as I have.
It's always a pleasure to delve into these fascinating topics with you.
And to our listener, we leave you with this question. What practices or rituals in your own life help you find that sense of balance and connection? What steps can you take to approach them with more intentionality and purpose?
It's a great question.
Love to hear your reflections.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah.
And we'll see you on our next deep dive.